I suppose we're going to get started now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AAM's Environment Climate Networks webinar. This is the winners webinar that you're attending. My name is Joyce Lee, the chair of the professional network, and want to welcome you all today. Our professional network put a focus on exploring and articulating environmentally sustainable practices and take climate action to the next level. We all remember that US is now back in the climate agreement, the Paris Agreement, as of 2021, and the culture sector can play a very big part. We are very proud of the fact that AAM had signed a cultural heritage and sustainability climate MOU last year. And of course, today we have the wonderful Sustainability Excellence Award seminar that you can all hear. We will also have a green coffee hour that will meet on July 29th at 12 p.m. And before the AAM conference, we had an International Museum Day event on planetary health. The recording is now available and will soon be on the ECN website. Our colleague, Sharon and Heather, may be putting the link onto the chat as well. And most recently, when we had this recording up on our social media, we received over 4,000 hits. We are also doing case studies within our network, and we are thrilled to be getting a lot of voluntary interest in compiling best practices. So the team will put out the email address if you are interested in joining or being more involved. In all, we are heading into a great year and would like to highlight all of your achievements as well as provide a space for learning. So I am going to turn it over to our moderator, Kate Tallman, who will be moderating this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our panelists and attendees for joining us this morning. My name is Kate Tallman. I was honored to be one of the judges for this 2021 Sustainability Excellence Awards, and I am excited to be the awards chair for the upcoming 2022 awards season. So this morning we are we're starting a two-part series focusing on our 2021 winners, with the first session today and the second session on August 17th. And we are thrilled to have the Louisiana Children's Museum, the Madison Children's Museum, and the Bell Museum here to showcase their incredible work. Each museum will present on their respective winning projects, and then we will have time for a short Q&A after the presentations. So if you have questions for our speakers, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and we will get them asked. Before we start, I do want to thank Sharon Gaber for managing our chat and socials, and Heather McCafferty for moderating the Q&A sessions. So our first presenters today are Julia Bland, CEO of the Louisiana Children's Museum, and Rich Franco, partner and museum design practice leader from Methuen, the design firm responsible for many of the thoughtful features in the museum. Julia and Rich, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kate and Joyce. We are hugely honored to be participating today and to be the recipient of your very prestigious award. So thank you. It's a privilege to be with you. Our journey really began many years ago. In 2005, we started rethinking who we were as an institution and reimagining ourselves as where we could be in the future. Later that year, our city and region had a dramatic impact that has imprinted all of our lives with the arrival of Hurricane Katrina. This is actually our site in New Orleans City Park, which was covered with 4 feet of water, as was 80% of our city was underwater for weeks, if not months. But it allowed us to really reframe our thinking as we imagined who we were, who we could be, what kind of role we could play in our community, and how we could convene and collaborate as we considered moving from our original downtown location in the middle of a warehouse district, the site, the image that you see at the bottom, on a 19,000 square foot footprint, to really rethinking who we could be in the middle of a beautiful 1,300-acre park, as we were able to secure an 8.5-acre site on a lagoon. Water is important. As you look at this map of New Orleans, you see Lake Pontchartrain, the Mississippi River, and understand that water throughout our country drains into the Mississippi River. Really, 1/3 of the watershed from our country drains into our river. It was Winston Churchill who said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And as we started rethinking who we could be and understanding the role of water and the threat of water globally, we looked at the role of water locally and started thinking about this new site and how we could tell the story of water, of living with water, of building water literacy, of really thinking about water as an asset rather than a threat. We even convened a group of children in a wonderful focus group series and asked them to share their thoughts and observations around water in their everyday lives. We were so enlightened and so inspired and started thinking about how to use this magical site and transform it into a demonstration project, into a destination, an anchor institution that would welcome all around the region and the world, really, to learn about the Louisiana Children's Museum's role with water and water management. As we selected our leading design team members, we did a national search, and we were very focused on securing some of the most reputable designers in the country for both architecture, the landscape architecture, the exhibits, the experiences, and the early childhood thinking. And we really assembled an incredible design team. We were also inspired by the global model of Reggio Emilia as we listen to children, as we consider how place-based we want to be. We really look at the strengths of our community and think about how to understand the children's thinking, the children's learning processes, and really have children's voices everywhere in our new museum. As we selected the people who would guide this journey, we were so thrilled to end up with an integrated design team of Methuen. And Rich Franco will take it from here to talk about how their design work was very place-based in everything that we did.
Thanks, Julia. I think when we first came to the site and had our tour from Julia, I think we were struck by just this amazing live oaks in the lagoon in the location in City Park. City Park has the world's largest collection of mature live oaks, and they have just an amazing sensibility and feel on our own site. Some really unique trees that we studied and photographed and sized. And here we are with our landscape team and Mac Ball meeting with our arborist, who's telling us how close and how to protect and how to make sure that they continue as part of the legacy on site. And then starting to connect that into elements of New Orleans around place-based, everything from the meander of the river, the mix of land and water, the history of the long lots, courtyards, and this weave of land and water, all elements that start to connect it to place and to this site. Another thing we thought about was what could be the experience for each person on site, whether it's a child, a family, they're just coming to visit the park, whether they're a visitor or guest. And so that there would be different levels of experience throughout the site so that everyone who visits the park could experience some elements of the Children's Museum. And then this careful integration, working around each of the trees and then creating this site that really each child who comes really moves through the landscape as part of the experience. That not only are the indoor exhibits, but that an essential part of the experience is moving through the site. So the final design you can see here as it starts to open out and wrap its arms around this courtyard, opening out to the lagoon, a series of landscape experiences you see to the left of the screen and even at the bottom, there's the um, floating classroom and other pieces on the lagoon. There are multiple entrances, and also as you come in, you elevate up about 5 feet. You saw that initial image of the flooded site where it was about 4.5 feet underwater. And then also an entry where you come through this wonderful experience of the cloud sculpture, where we worked in collaboration with Fujiko Nakaya to create an experience for children around water that was positive and immersive. And so as you come into the porch, you can see children really get excited as they come through that sculpture piece. So the sustainable design goals, there was early vision from the museum to have LEED certification and sustainability as an important element. Some of the elements, you can see that they're relatively shallow footprints to the building that enables daylighting, that there are louvers to the south and west that help protect for solar shading. The building and mechanical systems are elevated 5 feet above grade. The shoreline of the lagoon was extensively replanted with native wetland plantings. And then this careful adjacency of the live oaks for this biophilic visual and kind of sensory connection. And then the north building, the stormwater is collected in a 9,000 gallon cistern for irrigation. And we'll get into a little later in the energy piece that we have in-slab radiant cooling, which was presented some unique opportunities for energy savings and making sure it would work successfully in the humid climate of New Orleans. And the baseline EUI or energy use had about a 50% reduction from the model EUI. I'll get into that a little later also. An important part is this stormwater story because New Orleans was developing the New Orleans Urban Water Plan pilot projects. And so the intent was that the site would act as a storage for the local community for stormwater, up to 2 to 3 feet of storage. You can see in this animation what happens as water comes onto the site, and these elevated hummocks stay above the water as it comes in, but it allows it to provide some storage while keeping things functional and safe at the museum. 60% of the site approximately is protected or restored native plantings. And then the bioswales treat the stormwater runoff from at least 90% of the annual rainfall. And the rainfall there is substantial and comes in large doses. Connections to nature and making sure this whole goal of getting children out and about on the site, an image of this entry piece around engaging with water. And then some of the other sustainability elements. The concrete is a 40% fly ash substitution for the cement, and that resulted in an overall global warming potential reduction of 11% on the entire project. So the energy use, this gets a little technical, but the benchmark is 296 for a museum in New Orleans. Predicted was about 144 and measured was 108. So a 64% reduction from the benchmark. And the Arup team was our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and energy lead on developing these systems. We had air-to-air heat pumps. We had a dedicated outdoor air system, and then a desiccant wheel, which removes moisture from the air that comes in, because the big goal, we didn't want to have condensation if we had cooled slabs. So the great thing about the desiccant wheel, it reduces the dew point down to 49 degrees, meaning that it would have to be really, really cold in there to get condensation on the slabs. And that's in the 2 exhibit areas. There's solar shading throughout. You can see the louvers on the porch, and you can see the fritting on Julia Street, which is the connecting element between the 2 buildings. 76% of the spaces have daylight. This is at the cafe, looking into one of the live oaks in the lagoon. So daylight is really important for multiple reasons. And then materials. A local supplier found this wonderful sinker's cypress that was from the estate of a Louisiana naturalist and author. It just had this amazing history and wonderful feel. It's one of the first things you touch as you come into the museum. The office furniture, we looked for vinyl and PVC-free furniture using a lot of Knoll furniture that met the Clean Air Gold standard. We had 38% recycled content, which meets the LEED exemplary rating. And then biophilia and connections to the outdoors. This is spaces we call the Kindos, and there's a series of them that both create spaces that are a child's scale, but also we had these wonderful vines that came up outside, and these vines attract the fritillary butterfly. So from these little windows, you not only get prospect view in your own personal space, but you get this view out to the site and to nature. The landscape team, Deb Gunther and Christian Runge and our team, had this concept of the oaks, the hummocks, and the hollows, and really accentuating the rise and fall of the landscape that's so important in New Orleans that even a foot can make a huge difference. And that translated to the interior, where Gyroscope and Julia developed some really key exhibits that also told the water story. So Move with the River is an incredible water feature that tells the story of the entire Mississippi, from kind of the headlands to the outfall. Also on site are opportunities to kind of view the lagoon and have active play, as well as a planting area and an outdoor food prep and kind of growing area that's right next to the big cistern. And then opportunities for environmental education and tours as families move through the site. With that, I'll turn it back to Julia.
So thank you, Rich. As you know, children's museums are family museums. We attract always 2 generations, sometimes 3, and periodically 4 generations. So it's important for us to have, it was important for us to have created environments where the children are learning alongside their parents, and they're experiencing the beauty and the environment in a way that they become stewards of our heritage and our natural environment in the years to come. The Play With Me Gallery is accessible right near the Dig Into Nature Gallery with fabulous views of outside, connecting indoors and outdoors using environmentally sensitive materials as children experience the wildlife and fishery imbued environment in this exhibit gallery. We also had a wonderful set of experiences interviewing grandparents about their memories of childhood as seen through filters of nature and food, storytelling, family experiences that were so beautiful that we compiled a number of them as aspirations from the grandparents to their grandchildren. It sets a really beautiful tone of love and honor and respect as you enter our lobby and come into the museum to experience time together. The museum is very place-based in all of the interactive experiences. We've actually learned a lot from Madison Children's Museum over the years and thinking about what is indigenous, what is local, what is regional, what is important to us. And this big blue gantry crane signifies one of many gantry cranes on the Port of New Orleans up and down the Mississippi River. And this is a key spot in our Follow That Food exhibit gallery, where children interact together and have connections to where they are and the role of the Port of New Orleans throughout the world. We were open for only 6 months before the pandemic hit. And so it was really devastating on every level to have to close our big blue doors to the public. But because we had so many incredible spaces that Methuen had designed and Gyroscope had created, we felt very strongly that those spaces needed to be used at a time when schools were beginning to consider in-person learning again. And for what ended up being the full academic year last year, 2020 to 2021, we hosted a school. Langston Hughes Academy used the Louisiana Children's Museum for their pre-K and kindergarten classes. And the children came to school and used our exhibits, our outdoor learning environments, everything about the museum for the full academic year. I'm happy to say, to tremendous gains. They made tremendous academic gains, outpacing their peers in their charter network and almost doubling the scores that are average for Louisiana students. But we were thrilled to be able to use our site, to learn from the children, to learn from the parents and the teachers, and to help inform how we'll use this magical facility as we continue on. We have reopened now just about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and have welcomed back many of the Langston Hughes kids to come and play in the museum. So the resilience of the site is experienced by day and by night. Another wonderful thing we were able to do while we were closed is welcome a leadership retreat. The Live Oak Wilderness Camp convenes children, or not children, but teenagers from 70 different high schools, and they met on a monthly basis at the museum by candlelight and firelight as they talked about who they were as individuals, as peers, as leaders, and really thinking about their relationship to the community and to leading the community in new ways in the generations ahead. So the museum space has been designed, was originally designed to be used as an interactive hands-on museum. It's now hosted a school and hosted a series of leadership retreats for high school freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and continues to look at ways to partner in the community to become a resource that can inspire, that can convene, that can be used for demonstration purposes as people of all ages learn about our lands, our ecosystems, our habitats, learning to live with water, learning to manage water, learning to use water and consider water an asset as we build our water literacy and take good care of this land that we've inherited. So I think Rich can highlight the many, many talented players on this team. We were so privileged to work with really a national collection of talented people who worked together beautifully and delivered a very stellar museum that we're so thrilled is being honored today. And we hope that you all will all come visit.
Thanks, Julia. And I think, just some of the key players were Arup and our kind of energy strategies, pastoric habitats for helping us with finding native plants that were appropriate to the site, and Bayou Tree Service to help protect these amazing live oaks. And then also our team at Roy Anderson, who would be working outside when it's 90 degrees and 90% humidity. We're really thankful for all the work they did to make this happen, as well as our local associate architect in New Orleans, Wagner Ball. So with that, I think we're open for if there's any questions.
Yeah, so I don't think I picked up on the fact that you guys were open. You had hosted a school during the entire 2020-2021 year, and that is fantastic. That's a very intentional choice that you guys made, and I appreciate that. I do know that in deliberations, the jury talked about how wonderfully personal and community-based the choices that you made are. It's wonderful work. Yes, I'm sorry, Heather, did we have any questions from our attendees for?
We did, yeah. Yes, we did. Julia and Richard, thank you so much. What a wonderful example. Really hope to maybe get to your museum someday. I'm in California, but you never know. We did have one question. The question is, how did the Louisiana Museum establish the EUI benchmark from CBECs?
Yep, so great question, and always a challenging question, which Joyce is very aware of. The CBECs, or the database for national database has issues, but Mike Fowler, our in-house energy person, established the database. I'm sorry, the benchmark looking at CBEX. So that is correct. I think probably the most relevant would be kind of what would be a code design building, what would be the reduction beyond that. So in that case, we were about a 30% reduction beyond code, which perhaps is a more important one.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have another question. We ran into potential legal and health issues with hosting schools during the pandemic. How did you overcome those issues?
We worked with our superintendent of schools, our school board members, and we were very intentional about the selection of a participating school, a partner school. Their attorneys and our attorneys worked together. They had guidelines from the Department of Health and the Department of Education on a state level, and we were very rigorous about the standards we set up to be able to operate as a school site while we were closed as a museum site. It was an amazing experience, transformational experience, and the children benefited. As I said, they benefited tremendously. I think the teachers did as well. It was amazing.
Thank you, Julia. We do have a few more questions. Kate, how are we doing on time? Should we go forward, or?
I think we're going to move on to our next participant, and then if we can ask the remaining questions at the end of the seminar. I think maybe we'll do that, just to ensure that all the panelists have enough time to share their projects. So thank you again, Julia and Rich. I appreciate you being here today. So next, we would like to welcome Brenda Baker and Nadia Nickley from the Madison Children's Museum. Brenda is the Director of Exhibits, and Nadia is the Senior Exhibit Designer for the MCM. Thank you both for being here, and you can go ahead as soon as you're ready.
Okay.
I think Brenda's muted.
Brenda, are you muted? Can you hear us?
I am muted. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. First of all, I just wanted to start by saying thank you to AAM for this really wonderful award. This kind of award is so important because it really is important for us to keep the conversation going and to be able to share with one another and learn from each other is really the best way we can help create a more sustainable future. So I just wanted to start by giving an overview of our museum. This is an image of our museum, which is in downtown Madison. It's a city of about 200,000, located on an isthmus. That's a word a lot of people don't know, but we're in a strip of land between many lakes. We're between two lakes, and we're overlooking the Wisconsin state capitol. Madison's in a very progressive community, but in a state that is more conservative. We have about 200,000 visitors a year. Prior to the pandemic, our budget was over $3 million, and we're looking forward to bouncing back in new ways as we go forward. Today we're going to start a little bit differently. We're going to give a little bit of an overview of our past work in sustainable design, primarily because we really feel like the project that we got the award for, the Trash Lab, is really a culmination of all of the work that we've done for the past 25 years in sustainable design. So I'm going to give an overview of where we've been and how that, and Nadia will talk about how that informed our work and what we did with the Trash Lab. So we can move on. Okay, so this image is one I really love because I feel like it really talks about our humanity and the whole idea that children, what we're doing as museums is really trying to inspire all the people that we care for to respect, collaborate with one another, and learn about and appreciate the cultures, histories of others who may be different from us. and to share stories that recognize our shared humanity and interspecies linkages. Mostly, I think our role as exhibit designers is to inspire our visitors to ultimately use their gifts to help better the world. So the quote on the left here is one by Willie McDonough. And I first went to the first sustainability conference I went to was in 1993. It was an architecture conference. And, you know, I remember him saying this, that if every organization or company was able to adopt this as their mantra or their mission, that we would all be in a much better place. I apologize for my dog. He just had surgery and he's acting out a little bit right now. Anyway, this idea that we need to inspire our visitors to use their gifts to help better the world is something that I think we've been trying to do in all of our work. So at a time when our house, just a sec, at a time when our house is literally on fire, and when we have unprecedented heat waves and fires threatening our lives and livelihoods, melting glaciers, strengthening hurricanes, and increasing imbalance in our ecosystem, I feel like we owe it even more to our children to serve the children that we served and the children of all species, to protect their homes and our homes, and to do everything in our power to change their behaviors to meet the challenge of our time. As some of the most trusted organizations in our communities, I think the choices that we make and the stories we tell ourselves and others really do matter. Next, and I'm just going to quickly put my dog outside. Sorry. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. Okay. In launching our early green projects, as I mentioned before, we began in the mid 90s. We really were looking at how we can, and focusing more on exhibits, because we really started from an area where exhibit design was the place we needed to start. We weren't doing a green building. There was no such thing as LEED certification. We were using environmental building news as our Bible. And we didn't come to the work in this way that many others have. We didn't come trying to start and to create exhibits about green design. We came at it from a health perspective, because we unearthed the fact that a lot of the toxins, a lot of the materials that we used in standard practice for exhibit building were in fact full of toxins. We worked really hard to, I've just changed my screen, sorry. But we worked really hard to use materials that honored children, sorry. We used materials that were honoring children, and we came up with a new philosophy that was really about using design as a signal of human intention. And by that, I mean that all design going forward from when we began doing this work in the mid 90s, we decided that all design needed to be based on children's needs. And we felt like we wanted to work toward creating new standards for safety, particularly based on children. Next slide. Our first green exhibit was First Feats, and it started in 1998. That's when it opened to the public. Our goal with that exhibit was to do 95% natural, sustainable, or local materials. We created an exhibit using no plastics, laminates, or vinyls. We had a goal of using no VOCs, no materials that emitted VOCs. So that meant no plastics, no laminates, no vinyls, which at this time was really a challenge because, as I mentioned, there was no such thing as LEED certification when we began this work. So we were really doing a lot of experimentation and kind of working things out on our own. We really limited known toxins, and we worked on designing and building locally. So we made a commitment to working with local artists. Next, after that, we developed an institutional sustainability mission. When we first started this work, many of our board members were a little dubious of going out on a limb. And once again, I feel that we received an award from the Association of Children's Museums, a Promising Practice Award, and that actually really helped some of our board members even come to understanding that this was a good way to go. So our institutional sustainability mission was crafted by both our board and our staff. We developed a green team, and this has really guided all of our work since that time. After that, we got another Promising Practice Award from the Association of Children's Museums, and this was to develop an exhibit called greenexhibits.org, and this was basically sharing our work with others. One of the, I believe that there's going to be a link placed in the chat box to get to greenexhibits.org, and one of the things I wanted to point out is we created a sustainable exhibit design checklist based on what we saw in environmental building news. And this is just a short version of what some of the things are that are in that sustainable exhibit design checklist. But we were really, again, rethinking the menu, not just a recipe. And I think this is important when we think about where we are right now, having just come out of a pandemic and it being in a place where we can really rethink all of our systems at our museums, that this is a time for us to be rethinking the menu, not just the recipe, thinking what it is that we want to serve. Next. So that was in 2006, and in 2010 we opened our new building, and we decided that we wanted to take our environmental initiatives much further. So we developed an only local initiative where we were focusing on working with only local people, local resources, and local materials. And of the 15,000 people who collaborated with us, we had only one person who was from out of state. And we got to work with lots and lots of people. Nadia, can you go back? Yeah, thanks.
Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah. So the really, another real great benefit of this only local initiative was that we, got to decrease our carbon footprint. We also, decreasing our travel costs, but mostly it helped us build up pride within our local community about doing something that was made with local talent and with local materials. So there was a story for everything, everything that came into the museum. Next. This is a photo of our early learning space. And again, this was, we started experimenting with local, natural, and sustainable materials. So we used wheatgrass and linseed oil and mud and local stone and local wood. The floor itself was a partnership with the Woodland Owners Association, and we had 7 woodland owners that donated all of their ash trees, selectively harvesting their ash trees. So that was a really wonderful thing for us to experiment with local, natural, and sustainable materials. Next. And then we also were experimenting with reclaimed materials. So we opened like this exhibit is called Possibilopolis, and everything within the exhibit space was made out of reclaimed material. So the sustainability goal for that exhibit was 100% reclaimed material. So you can see we have a tinkering table made out of an old airplane. Our floor is made, is an old gym. So everything on that entire exhibit space was made out of reclaimed parts. Next. And then finally, we experimented. As we've gone forward, we've tried to experiment with not just using green materials in our exhibit, in all of our exhibit design, but we're also now creating more exhibits that are about sustainability. So we opened an exhibit on our rooftop that focused on wind energy, water energy, and solar energy. These are some solar flowers that rotate and move, so kids are able to choose the amount of solar that they want to that they would like to show, and then on a sunny day the flowers do lots of spinning, and on a cloudier day they move more slowly. So all of these the things that we've done over the last 20 years have really came together for this new exhibit that we just developed, which is called Trash Lab, in which Nadia will carry on and explain more about. So thank you.
Great. Yeah. So Yeah, so Trash Lab really crystallized our longstanding commitment to sustainable exhibit design and kids' health. We designed this over COVID, and we partnered with the Dane County Department of Waste and Renewables, our local landfill staff, to design both the content and the overall exhibit plan. And it really helped us focus on what was important to us and double down on that commitment to sustainable exhibit design. Here you see it in the deep, deep of winter, if you can imagine this right now in July. But I wanted to make sure we showed this image here. This is shown prominently in our exhibit design. It is just so impactful to see this image. It's really, it really reminds us that kids too often bear the burden of our thoughtlessness and this constant quest for convenience. So it really highlights that it's kids all around the world, but also kids at home who are so affected by climate. And it's communities of color, it's communities of lower socioeconomic status, communities of limited ability to move away, who are really stuck with the worst consequences of pollution and unregulated waste. And it's too often easy to turn a blind eye to that. So we wanted to really show this prominently in the exhibit. Here you see that we have covered the entire ceiling of the trailer. Oh, I forgot to tell you, this is a mobile exhibit. This is a 30-foot trailer, usually a car hauler that we got as a secondhand. So this is also upcycled and repurposed, the trailer itself. But this exhibit can be taken around town. So it really is designed to advance equity and inclusion of education education about sustainability to all parts of the county. So it's really going to where the kids are. So we set a challenge to ourselves to use 90% repurposed or upcycled or recycled materials. And we're very happy that we met that goal. The ceiling and the exterior of the exhibit both call to mind all these objects that we fill our lives with and then so readily dispose of. But what we wanted to do here is present it in a more beautiful way to get you to rethink how you think about waste. Can we present something ugly in unexpected ways to challenge your thinking? So this is by presenting it in a curated, considered way, we're trying to shift people's thinking. And we're unapologetic about that. Here's sort of an overview of the inside of the trailer. We've sectioned it off into rethink, protect, and redesign. And it's very much based on a modular design. This was really key. We started off fairly early with that in the exhibit design goal, and we kept to it. This exhibit is hopefully going to last about 10 years, and we know that it will change within those 10 years. We built this, as I said, with the Dane County Department of Waste and Renewables, and they might have changing needs over that time. So by making it modular, we made each panel section removable so they could take it out of this context and, say, display it somewhere else. So not just the materials being green, but also the way we designed it to be adaptable over time was really key to sustainable exhibit design. Just a couple of notes here. We have some tech sprinkled throughout the exhibit. There are a few monitors And we also expect that to change over those 10 years. Everything gets so outdated so quickly, but we've designed it so that parts of the panels can be replaced. It's not that the entire monolithic sign panel, say, has to be changed out. It's meant to be smaller sections that can be reconfigured later if needed. And here, this is the first section of the exhibit, which delves into the history of landfills, setting up the ideas that we've all come to accept somehow about consumer culture. You can see on the right the Reuters image of the kids on the raft and the hierarchy of needs. These are all great visuals to help engage visitors really quickly. There's also a timeline here. So it's just, trying to get people to rethink, right? So we also present the idea of a circular system of closing the loop. So we posit nature as the model, where in nature, there's no such thing as waste. So what if we could close the loop and turn our waste back into something usable? Here, this is kind of a fun part. This is our cabinet of curiosities. We had a great time finding all these objects, all taken from the waste stream, various places, salvaged a lot of it. In fact, we, as a staff, our small COVID staff over the year, we went on a salvage day one day to some properties that the county was demolishing, and salvaged this weather vane from the top of one of the barns. We got a lot of hardware like hinges and knobs and casters, all very usable still and ready, to go to the landfill otherwise. And this is our middle section of the exhibit. This is the protect section, and this is about the science behind the landfill, and gets pretty technical, but we wanted to make sure it was still really engaging for kids of all ages. So we peppered it with several interactives. You see cross sections of the landfill itself, across life-size cross section on the far left, and the renewable natural gas plant on the right there. Let's see. This is the landfill model, a close-up. It helps visitors track the flow of the captured methane gas and leachate and water, stormwater through the system. Not usually such an exciting thing for kids to learn about, but we've made it a little bit more engaging with some motion sensors down there at the bottom. The kids can track where everything is going, and it actually connects to the next, to this renewable natural gas plant, which is lit up with LEDs embedded inside this, inside these parts of the plant. So you can actually see how the methane gas is purified. And this is one of my favorite parts of the exhibit, actually, because it's something that nobody here actually knows about in Madison, in Dane County. Very few people know that the county is pioneering this very forward-thinking way of closing the loop. So by highlighting this, making this really a fun part of the exhibit, we're showing how they're able to capture the methane and use it to and transform it into fuel for actual county vehicles. So we're trying to show the good work that they're already doing. And then in this next section, we're trying to get people to think about what they can do in their own lives to make substantial changes. I think people are really hungry for ways, tangible ways that they can make changes in their lives. So this last section here is based on these 5 R's. We've taken some liberties with those. But this is, again, a lot of hands-on interactives. There's a mashup game here I'll talk about in a minute. Recycling, this is a sorting game. Here we have a selfie station, the colorful mural, and then the last section is a writing prompt as well. So that lots to do hands-on here. Okay, and here you can see the two, I love these, the wheels. You turn an hourglass timer, which is actually upcycled as well. It's made from an old thread spool. And then you spin both wheels and you try to come up with a mashup. So say you get a bicycle wheel on the left and you get a cushion on the right, and you come up with a, you know, spinning Lazy Susan seat. So it's pretty fun. The kids can draw what they make there and then hang it up for others to see. And here, this is just showing that. Yes?
Sorry, we are a little over time.
Oh, okay. I'll just keep going on, just one more second, but just to show the outside of the exhibit again. And then Brenda, do you want to wrap it up then? All right, and Brenda, you're muted. Just yeah.
Yes. So just in summary, you know, we believe strongly that the way we design and build exhibits can change attitudes and behaviors. The design matters a lot, and it signals what we care about. Children should be the benchmark for all safety, and we should all be working toward a closed loop system and circular economy. So thank you all.
Thank you both. Thank you. Brenda, I think we've all been at the mercy of our pets before, and I know that I do not handle it with such grace. And as the exhibits committee reviewed this particular application, I know that we were really blown away by your dedication to resourcefulness and with the community partnerships that were utilized in the exhibit. That was fantastic work. Heather, did we have any questions for the Madison Museum? But I think for right now, we're going to keep it to one or two really quickly so that we can let the Bell go into their presentation.
Yes, we do. We have one question. So I'll read it. Love the chromatic elements of this mobile exhibit. What kinds of messaging specific to plastic waste issues did you A, decide to focus on directly, B, decide to address indirectly or by association, and C, decide not to address? Thanks. Beautiful and compelling focus on waste issues.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We decided, because of the space was so limited, we chose one activity, and that was a plastic usage calculator for single-use plastic. And so that's a computer game where you can put in what you're using on a daily basis, and then you learn about how much, you know, if you were to make different choices, you know, how much you could save. So that's it's a wonderful tool, and it's also, as Nadia said, really easy to update. But we focused on single-use plastic.
I think that's all the questions. Thank you for that response, Brenda.
Yes, thank you, Brenda and Nadia. All right, our final presenter is Daryl Lawrence, the museum facility manager at the Bell Museum in St. Paul, Minnesota. And the Bell had a very thoughtful approach to the disruptions of the pandemic, and they worked very hard to create a positive outcome in a very difficult time. So Daryl, please expand on the work that your staff has accomplished.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen right here and make sure it's selecting the PowerPoint and not my bazillion tabs open in a browser. All right, so I'm here to talk about the Bell Museum and what we did. So first of all, the Bell Museum, we are situated in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is the capital of our state, but you wouldn't really know it. The great thing about St. Paul, and especially where we are housed, we're within the University of Minnesota system. And the St. Paul campus has a very diverse way of forming a community and showing what you can do, especially with land. So we're a land grant institution and we have active agricultural fields, we have livestock, and we're right by the state fairgrounds for Minnesota. So when you come to our museum, you actually are right next to some of those ag fields. And it's a really cool thing thinking about you're in a state capital, but you're actually in the middle of nature. And it's perfect positioning for us as the state's Natural History Museum to feed off of that vibe and show that we are more than just an urban campus, that even though we have a very urban location in the Twin Cities, there are aspects that you can still get away and feel like you are one with nature, even though you're in the middle of hustle and bustle and you just took a freeway to get there. The current museum, and we will get into this, is relatively new, and I'm relatively new as well. So I came on board in February of 2020. I came from another department at the University of Minnesota that managed labs and research laboratories, which is an entirely different environment. So I came into the museum world being a museum lover myself. I overlapped with my predecessor and got to work right away understanding the nuances of this beautiful facility. So, as I said, we've been around for almost 150 years as the state's Natural History Museum. We are actually celebrating our 150th anniversary next year, and we're already planning some really fun things to showcase and highlight our entire history, but at the same time, how we're moving forward. So, we've really been intentional about how we showcase the state's history and how we can incorporate other aspects of natural history and pivoting towards our location in central Minnesota. So you can see with the graphic that we have wonderful dioramas. We have examples of antlers hung up on a wall. One would think maybe Teddy Roosevelt lives here, but nope, that's a wall in our museum. And we have over 1 million specimens in our collection. So we have a lot to draw upon. We have a lot that we can showcase, which is wonderful in terms of flexibility with a museum space. So we moved from our old site when we were on the Minneapolis part of the campus in the summer of 2018. So we are just, I think we are almost at the 3-year point of when we moved into the new museum. And we have 92,000 square feet. And something that's really important is that we acknowledge that we are on Dakota land. So we really value our partnership with the indigenous people within Minnesota, at the same time acknowledging that this land was once inhabited by other people and how we can honor that heritage and make sure that all voices within the state are represented in all that we do. And you can see that our statement on that is right here. It's actually something that's displayed as all of our visitors enter the museum as well, that we are very connected with the natural history and the social history of our state. So I had a wonderful time joining the team in February of 2020. And then once my predecessor left, I had about 2 weeks solo and then we closed. So it was very much learning how to operate a museum and how to give an experience to our visitors virtually and what we could do. So it was a quick pivot. I learned everything I could about the museum, and then I had to throw away about 50% of it because we had to change our approach to everything we were doing. So we have the old world and the old way of doing things, and then we have everything that I hit the ground running, and I had to create a lot of systems and processes and protocols as the museum facility manager to make sure that we were being as safe as possible. So we closed on March 13th. That's when a lot of places closed down right there in mid-March. And we reopened on a limited basis a few months later on July 16th, and we closed again on November 20th. So during that time, we limited our staff presence. Like everyone who opened on a limited basis, you really had to pick and choose who was going to be on site and who remained off site. And We were open on a limited number of days with timed entry. Our planetarium was not open for part of that time. So it was very much a balancing act heading into this and figuring out what this new world meant. And we knew that whatever we did, a lot of it would be temporary. So, what we could do to mitigate the overall impact of COVID-19 on our overarching operations, while at the same time being accommodating and understanding that we needed to put measures in place to make sure that our visitors were safe. So, the first thing that we really collaborated on and took advantage of, so we shut down, and the university as a whole put out a mandate for our energy management department to do something about energy consumption for all of these empty buildings on campus. Not just us, but the classroom buildings, the office buildings, the research laboratories, what needed to run and what could be sort of winterized / summarized so that less energy was consumed. So while there was an overall mandate, it was a case-by-case basis based on the needs for the building. So research laboratories, scientific research can't stop. So, for example, those labs kept running at about 50%, but the energy consumption didn't really dip because of it. So I approached my conversation knowing we had certain needs within the building. For example, we have live animals. We have a great touch and see lab, and a lot of the animals are cold-blooded. You cannot change the temperature on them because that will impact their lives significantly. So there were zones where I had to maintain the same level of energy consumption, especially when it came to HVAC, knowing that we needed to keep our animal friends happy and comfortable. And there were other areas such as the office suite where no one was going to be. So that's where I could roll back some of the energy consumption, some of the air that we were pumping in, so that we were still doing the required number of air exchanges per hour as set forward by external entities, but making sure that we didn't have to go hog wild on it because no one was actually in that space. So if someone needed to pop in to get something, they knew it was safe, but it wasn't an environment where we knew we had dozens of people sitting in cubicles like we used to. And something that I really paid attention to that was mentioned on that last slide was seeing what we could do to carry things forward. So if we were making changes now, how could we make those sustainable changes stick when we reopen to the public as we knew we would to our full capacity again, which we did recently in just at the end of June. So it was important to keep an eye on these changes are great. We're using less energy. How can we make sure that we are mindful of this in the future? And as this shows, we have large open galleries, so we wanted to make sure that our energy consumption was smart. A lot of that was energy management because they control the sensors and the actual controls for our HVAC system. But some of it was lighting and our electronic usage and what we could do within our galleries to make sure that our energy consumption was low. So our galleries were dark. I had to go through there with a flashlight so I could make my way to the manual control panels because one of our systems went down, our lighting control system. So we used to be able to control it electronically, but when you shut a museum down, sometimes the systems don't want to wake back up. So one of those was being able to control our lighting remotely. So using a flashlight to get through those dark galleries so I could turn the lights on when they were needed. And really the only gallery lights that remained on and that actually stuck with our settings was a big window that has a woolly mammoth in it, so that people knew that we were still alive, that they could one day revisit the Bell Museum, and that woolly mammoth was lit up every evening from sundown until midnight. So people driving by knew that we were still a place that they were welcome once it was safe for them to visit again. The next thing was our actual exhibits. So we maintained our current exhibits, analyzing which interactives needed to be cleaned more and which had to be temporarily shut off or closed, and delaying a traveling exhibit we were bringing in. So we have a homegrown exhibit called Audubon Animated. And it's wonderful. We have tons of original Audubon prints, and we got to showcase some of them. And that was the exhibit that was in our temporary galleries when we shut down. And because we shut down early, it was originally going to move on, I believe, in May of 2020. We extended it through the end of the year when we reopened because we realized people still wanted to see it. But we also did not have the capacity nor need to bring in a traveling exhibit when things were so tentative. So we delayed that traveling exhibit, thereby lessening the carbon footprint of having that shipped out to us. And it's something that I think benefited all parties. And it was a small change, but I think it was a significant enough change that we did make, and it was consciously made so that we could be more friendly to the environment and have something that was homegrown stick around a little bit longer and show people those fantastic prints. Some of the panels that we have around the museum being so new, we have a lot of interactives, which are fantastic, but people touch interactives. And as the science developed throughout the course of the pandemic, we realized that touch didn't transmit as much as coughing, breathing, and other respiratory actions. So at the beginning, when we reopened, we were cleaning everything all the time. And it's something that we really didn't need to do at the end of the day, but it was still part of that visitor experience that we actually got a lot of really great feedback from people seeing our custodial staff going around and wiping things down consistently throughout the day. And previously, that's something that never happened. The impact of what we did was seen, but we ourselves were never seen on the floor cleaning something unless it was a spill or something like that. So it was a change in how we operated throughout the course of our open hours. And it's something that was very much appreciated by our visitors. There were a limited amount of screens that were shut off because they were at pinch points in the museum. But we kept that to a minimum because we still wanted to maintain as many things as possible for our visitors to enjoy and give them hopefully a bit of an escape from the pandemic and the outside world. Our cleaning protocols did change. As I mentioned, we were wiping things down hourly, and we changed what we were using. So I actually consulted with a branch of our waste management team at the university to understand what could go into our organics recycling, what products I could use, and what not only the product in terms of the disposable cloth, but what chemicals could be used that would not impact the organic recycling process. And it's mechanically recycled, so it's a bit different from what I do at home, which is putting things into a little bin and waiting for it to break down. So more things could go into that organics recycling and still be safe. And that was something I trained my staff on. I have the student custodial staff that cleans throughout the day, and they understood what could be recycled. Another thing, we moved away near the end of the pandemic from disposable gloves to the yellow kitchen gloves that we use when cleaning things around our houses, because that's something that you can clean and reuse rather than adding massive amounts of latex or rubber gloves into the waste stream, because those couldn't be recycled. There were recommendations that I had to work on with our exhibit staff, because me coming from the lab environment, I was all about sanitizing things, and that is not something you can necessarily do on the things that are made for museums. And that was a shock to me that everything was pretty, but it was not made to hold up under chemicals. So we worked really carefully on what we could use, and sometimes it was just soap and mild detergent to wash things down. Sometimes it could be isopropyl alcohol, especially on those touch screens because they're glass. Isopropyl alcohol won't hurt them. So we actually did a couple walkthroughs together, myself and the exhibits team, physically pointing things out, saying, this is what can be used on that. I developed those guidelines, and then I taught my staff the new training protocols because we had to toss out everything they knew from before. So I mentioned this, there were biodegradable wipes that we used. The isopropyl alcohol was a game changer in terms of being able to wipe things down and then having it dry quickly. So as soon as isopropyl alcohol was evaporates, you know that something has been sanitized, and it evaporates quickly. So we use that on our stainless steel surfaces, our door pulls, our elevator buttons, anything we could apply it to, we definitely did. When it came to pest control, this was another thing that I worked together with an exterior entity on, because we have a beautiful learning landscape. You can see it here. We have tons of native plantings. If you look towards the third window there, that's a bee colony that we have for honeybees. So we really pay attention to what we do outside and how it's going to impact that overall outside environment. So we got together and discussed last summer what could be done with the learning landscape and how we control pests. Because now that we have been there for 2 years at that point and 3 years, nature is getting used to us. We're not the new building on the block anymore. We're somewhere that they could possibly move into, and sometimes they do. So we wanted to have an understanding myself from the if it's a pest, we need to get rid of it stance, all the way through our animal care experts. We're like, we want to understand what pests are around to see what the natural environment is like and what the food chain may be like at our new site. So we had great discussions. I brought it forth to our pest control vendor and made sure that they knew what could be applied. So we can do very concentrated pest control, but we can't use things like powders because that will drift onto our wonderful pollinator landscape that you can see here. We have tons of flowers because we want those bees to be happy and we want butterflies to come by. So we developed a process and also a reporting structure so that all of us were on the same page, knowing what was being done, when it was being done. And if there are any questions, we always check with one another because we want to make sure that we're preserving as much as possible. So we use very limited traps for our mammal pests, and sometimes we want them to exist. So we had a bunny family move in this past spring, and we want to make sure that they stick around and that they know that they're welcome. So that's something I communicated with our land care team, letting them know this is the exact location of where they're living. Please don't disturb it. And making sure that our traps were not the style that would trap a cute little baby bunny rabbit, but rather is just focusing on the interior spaces and making sure that they are not going to eat away at our collections. And all that we catch really are deer mice. And that's about it. And that's a great thing because it's very limited in scope and we can still preserve the environment around us. So at the end of the day, we explored what we could do holistically, not only in the short term, but in the long term. And this led to me being now sort of the coordinator for sustainability at the museum. It wasn't really something that any one individual had taken on prior to the pandemic, but because of the work we put in throughout the course of the pandemic, that's a new role that I have as the museum facility manager. And making sure that people can check in with me and bounce ideas off of me before we execute anything. And that can stretch from our educators and what they would like to do in terms of maybe doing an activity on the landscape, all the way through what I do on an everyday basis, working with contractors, working with facilities, when they come in to do work, knowing that we have to be intentional about the choices that we make. So if you have any questions or comments that aren't answered, come up with them later on, feel free to shoot me an email. I am daryl@umn.edu, and I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Thank you, Daryl. I know that the jury felt that one of the strongest aspects of the work that your team at the Bell has done is how replicable it can be for any other institution of any size or scope. Yeah, so beautiful, lovely work. Heather, were there any questions for Daryl? I believe I saw a question.
Yes, we do. We have a question for Daryl. The question is, did you use catch and release traps?
Unfortunately, we do not use catch and release traps due to the exterior vendor who services. So they are kill traps, and they are serviced once a month. So we don't have the staff capacity to be able to check catch and release traps on a daily basis. That's a big factor in it, I believe, that we just can't support that. And I mean, the implications of having a catch and release trap checked once a month is horrific to me as an animal lover. So but again, it's very limited. We've never caught something within our building. And the limited perimeter traps we have, I think we have 3. And we have a large footprint. So it's something that was talked about and discussed when the building was designed and when we brought that pest control vendor on. They service the entire university, but they are very in tune with who we are and what we do. And we have active dialogue with them anytime we need to bring them in for anything extra. So they come by once a month. But right now, especially, we have a lot of paper wasps who are angry and will attack our visitors. So I'm seeing them more often than not right now, just to make sure that we can keep things like that under control. But otherwise, we sort of let nature do its thing.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, I want to express genuine thanks for our panelists and the work they do and for being with us today and sharing that work with us. We are very appreciative. And I wanted to thank our attendees again for joining us and encourage you to join us again on the 17th of August for the second session of this series that will focus on our other 3 winners of the Sustainability Excellence Awards. And then there will be a survey when you leave the webinar. And if you could take the time to fill it out, it'll help the ECN tailor our webinar content to what is most helpful. So I'm going to stop the recording now, but if you would like to hang out afterwards to ask a question to the panelists, please feel free to do so. You will still have to drop it through the question and answer platform, but that way we can get all your questions answered. So thank you, everyone, and have a very good day.